Welcome to Unit 10, Lesson 1. Today we're going to do an introduction to the urinary system. And this video is optional, as we'll be covering it in class. To begin with, we're going to define excretion and the 5 key organs involved in excretion, as the urinary system is actually a subsystem of the excretory system. We're also going to describe the 4 key functions of the urinary system and go into further details. So to begin with, what is excretion? Excretion is the removal of metabolic waste from body. So unlike elimination, where the material had never entered the cells, in excretion the material has actually been processed through the cells. So to look more closely, it's the unwanted byproducts of blank, which can also be described as blank slash blank, and of blank, which can also be described as blank slash blank. I know that's a lot of blanks and slashes there, but you guys are well aware of this by this point in the year. So I'm talking about the 2 types of classes of reactions that make up metabolism. So the first one, I'll give you a hint, starts with A. If you said anabolic, excellent. And is anabolic building or breaking? If you said it's building, good review, excellent. And what's a slightly fancier, more broad English term for building? Starts with an S. Synthesis, excellent. And the opposite of anabolic we have, that's right, catabolic, which instead of building is breaking, and instead of synthesis we could say degradation. So excretion is to get rid of the unwanted byproducts of anabolic and catabolic reactions that are necessary, the reactions being necessary to maintain, and by this time you're very comfortable with saying homeostasis. So there are 5 key organs of excretion where we get rid of these byproducts. The first is the skin, which excretes via perspiration. Which contains byproducts that we don't want, such as salt, urea, and water. And many of you have had the pleasure of working in the food industry where you have to wear gloves. If you notice when you wear gloves for a while, they turn yellow inside. That's actually the urea being excreted from the pores on your hands. As well, we have the liver, which excretes byproducts formed primarily when recycling red blood cells. Such as the pigment from breaking down hemoglobin, and these pigments turn bile green and urine yellow. As well, our lungs are involved in excretion. What's the byproduct that we're trying to get rid of out of our blood and out of our body through the lungs? If you said to excrete CO2 during blank respiration, what is that respiration that occurs in our lungs? Internal or external? If you said external, excellent. As well, our intestines involved in excretion, in particular our large intestine, which excretes calcium and iron-based salts. I should hyphenate because they're both calcium-based or iron-based salts, which end up in feces, which are then eliminated from the body. And finally, the one we'll be focusing on in this unit are the kidneys, which excrete urine. I don't know if you can hear her in the background, but my cat Dragon is having an attack right now, is running around the house. I'm sorry if you can hear that. Excrete urine, hydrogen ions, salt, water, and if we happen to be taking them, antibiotics. So those are the 5 sort of key parts in our body involved in excretion. And for this unit, the urinary system, we're going to be focusing on the kidneys. So there are 4 main functions to the urinary system, and they all combine for one key point, and that is they all function to help the body maintain homeostasis in various areas. So the first main function, the one that we typically associate with the urinary system, is the excretion of metabolic waste via urine. And we're looking at primarily what's called nitrogenous waste, waste that contain nitrogen atoms. So things like urea produced by the liver is filtered out by the kidneys into our urine. So urea, the production process, simply is we take amino acids, and when we break them down, we produce ammonia. And ammonia is NH3. And that combines with CO2 in our blood to produce what's called urea. And urea has the chemical formula of a carbon. It's double bonded to an oxygen. It's bonded to 2 NH2 groups. Okay, so that's one thing. We have ammonia. Whoops, sorry. I should move that back. As well. Produced by liver. And ammonium is just simply when you take ammonia, and when it's in water it forms ammonium ions. So not all ammonia is converted to urea, as well as uric acid, which is formed when nucleotides are broken down. And uric acid is interesting because if not removed from blood, it precipitates in joints, causing a condition known as gout. In particular, it tends to build up in the joint of the big toe, and it's supposedly very painful. And it also produces what's called, or excretes out, creatinine, which is when creatine phosphate is used by the muscles to power the muscles. It forms creatinine as a byproduct. Not creatine, creatinine. Which is then excreted out through the urinary system. As well, the urinary system is critical for maintaining our water-salt balance, okay, which in turn, we're talking about in our blood, in turn influences blood pressure. So a key part of regulating your blood pressure is having properly functioning kidneys. Now remember, wherever salt goes, water will follow. So if the kidneys help to increase concentration of salt in blood, water will follow, so you'll increase the amount of water. If you increase the amount of water in your blood, what do you do to your blood volume? That's right, you increase blood volume. And what does that do to blood pressure? You said increase blood pressure. Excellent. And vice versa is true. So if you decrease them, the same will follow with blood pressure. As well, kidneys regulate Na+, Cl negative, K+, that's potassium, HCO3 negative, bicarbonate ion, and Ca2+, calcium ion concentrations in the blood. And how this is done we'll take a closer look at when we talk about the particular functioning of the kidney. So while the urinary system helps to maintain acid and base balance in particular, it regulates blood pH at approximately 7.4 pH. And we talked about how the bicarbonate system helps to regulate blood pH, but if concentration of H+ is too high, or pH, what will happen to pH if H+ goes up? If you said it's too low, excellent. The kidneys will excrete excess H+ ions during what's known as tubular excretion, and we'll talk about that in lesson 2. As well, they will absorb HCO3 negative ions, so bicarbonate ions, to help regulate the pH. And finally, the urinary system is actually involved in secreting hormones, in particular involved in regulating blood pressure. So the kidney directly secretes a hormone called renin. Renal, kidney, renin, a hormone from the kidney, which causes the adrenal gland, adrenal, but we say it adrenal gland, which sits atop the kidney, to release another hormone called aldosterone. Which causes kidneys to increase reabsorption of salt. Now work your way through. If you increase your reabsorption of salt, what's going to happen to your blood pressure? That's going to equal an increase in H2O reabsorption, because wherever salt goes, water follows. And I just caught that mistake there. Which will then increase blood volume, which will do what to blood pressure? You said will increase blood pressure. You're absolutely correct. As well, it releases one other hormone. It releases erythropoietin, and I've mentioned this probably 2 or 3 times at this point. I think that's spelled with an E actually, which is a friend of Ralph's because it causes increased red blood cell production. And for those of you who aren't in my class and are maybe finding my videos online, Ralph is my red blood cell Steffi in my classroom. Okay, so causes increased red blood cell production. So those are sort of the 4 key functions of the urinary system. Excretion through the sort of urine and the bladder being key. We're going to go back and take a little more look at that. So to begin with, let's look at the key structures and their respective functions. Okay, sitting atop of the kidneys, like a fatty little toque almost, if you do a dissection, even in a rat or a pig, it looks like this fatty little hat on top of the kidneys, and that's called the adrenal glands. And they secrete hormones to regulate blood pressure. Then we have the kidney itself. And their job is to filter blood remove waste, to regulate blood pressure and blood pH, and to produce urine. Then down here is little tubes, and there's two of them, one from each kidney, are called the ureters, and they carry urine to bladder via peristalsis. So those of you who are want to stand on your head, you don't have to rely on gravity to move urine into your bladder. It's okay, you have peristaltic action moving it there. Then we have the bladder, which stores urine for excretion at the appropriate time. And then we have the urethra, which is what releases the urine from body. The exit route, so called. And then I just want to highlight up here how we have going into the kidney. The red one is called a renal artery, which is high in O2, but it's also high in waste. It's dirty blood. Okay, so dirty / unfiltered blood. And coming back out. Now they've shown it on two different kidneys, but you have a red and a blue coming in and out of each kidney. They just didn't show the red going into the other kidney. This is the renal vein, which is going to be lower in O2. It's provided O2 to the cells, but it's also going to be lower in waste. And this equals your so-called clean or filtered blood. And how that filtering occurs, we'll look in detail in lesson 2. Okay. The last thing we're going to look at in this lesson is just a closer look at the bladder and urination. Okay, so typically, unless you're a pregnant female with a developing fetus pushing on your bladder, typically the bladder can hold approximately 250 mils. That would be 1 cup of urine. After this point, what happens are stretch receptors. I think this is about the 4th time we've looked at stretch receptors. Of bladder send impulse to spinal cord in what is known as a reflex arc, and then the spinal cord sends signals via motor neurons, causing the following to occur. 1, the bladder should contract, very similar to how we eliminate feces. In that instance, it's the rectum contracting. And 2, we have internal and external sphincters around the urethra to relax. And as we mature and we so-called become potty trained, we learn to control those external sphincters. We learn to control the reflex arc via the brain to prevent external sphincters from relaxing. So that we can delay urination until a suitable time. Excellent. So those are the key sort of overview points of the urinary system. That's lesson 1. If you have any questions, please come see me in class. Otherwise, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in class.